Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Naomi, and today I want to talk to you about seasonal eating. Okay, now seasonal eating is really just the idea of eating foods that are in season in the area where you live, eating them maybe closer to where you live, like they're grown closer to where you live, and really eating in accordance to the seasons instead of eating foods, just because we can get them any time of year because of, modern convenience, right? And refrigeration and technology and, all kinds of other things. So I want to give you the pros and cons of seasonal eating because I think it's really important to make informed decisions. I'm personally a huge fan of seasonal eating. It's something that I've been doing probably for the past, 10 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, depending on, just depending on how I kind of look at it. But it's something that I feel pretty passionate about, and I want to share what I love about it with you, but I also want to give you the opportunity to think about, what some of the possible challenges might be and whether or not they are worth the challenge. So, all that said, let's start with the pros. So, pros of seasonal eating. So number one pro of seasonal eating locally, is that your food is going to be fresher. Your food is just going to be so much fresher. And there are actually two benefits to this. So the first benefit is just in the taste, right? So things that are fresher, things that are in season are going to taste a lot better than things that are not in season where you live. Okay, and I think that's actually a really important distinction to make because there are places, like California, there are things you can grow year-round there. But if you don't live in those places, if you don't live in California and it's being shipped all the way across the country to you, it takes a long time to get there. And so the flavor can decrease because it's, put in, it's frozen on the way, or it's transported, or, it goes from being cold to being hot to being cold again. It just takes a long time to get to your plate. And so, you think about the difference between a tomato that you eat at the height of summer, right, in the middle of July, versus a tomato that you have in December or January, right? There's just no comparison. The tomato in July is going to be juicier and full of flavor and just absolutely incredible, on your taste buds. And the one that you have in December or January is going to be kind of mealy and a little bit flavorless. Also maybe not as full of the nutrients that you want. That's the second thing, right? Is that, there have been a lot of studies done about how the freshness of the freshness of food corresponds directly to the nutritional value. So what a lot of the studies say is that within about a week of a vegetable or a fruit being harvested, within a week, usually that nutritional value declines rapidly. Okay, so the longer the food sits out, the longer that something is on the shelf, the longer that something is in transit, right? The longer that it takes to get from the fields to your kitchen, to your belly, the less nutritional value it has. So the fresher the food you have, the better, right? Number two, you can think of it this way. It's better for your health. Okay, why is it better for your health? Well, there have been some studies done about how eating seasonally can impact your immune system. Okay, now, these studies are really just sort of saying, listen, if you're eating things that are closer to home, that are grown at the time of year that you're meant to eat them, usually it's because nature is smart, right? Like Mother Nature really knows what's up. So a lot of the foods that thrive during winter, for example, have higher concentrations of vitamin A and vitamin C, things that help you fight off illness. Additionally, a lot of those things that you eat that are grown in winter, for example, like squash, things that are a little bit denser and heavier. Those are things that are easier for your body to hold on to and to process during that time of year. Your body wants heavier, warmer foods that time of year. It doesn't really need that in the summer. In the summer, your body wants foods that are a little bit more liquidy, right? You need more water during the summer. So that's when you see your watermelons, your tomatoes, that's when you see the berries, that's when you see cucumbers. These are like high water density foods. So your body needs those and craves those at the time of year that they happen to grow and thrive. So that will absolutely impact your health in a positive way. If you're eating things that are out of season, if you're eating things that have a higher water concentration, for example, in winter, it can actually cool off your body. It can create a little bit of a deficiency in your body in terms of, that temperature. It can reduce the temperature of your body, which is not necessarily something that you want in the winter, right? You want to increase your bodily temperature in winter. So it's just another thing to think about in terms of, well, why would I want to eat seasonally and locally? Well, because Mother Nature is smart, right? Mother Nature knows what's up, right? So Mother Nature grows the things that my body needs in this climate, this time of year, and I should be eating those things. Okay, number three is that when you buy seasonal, when you buy local, you are supporting two things. You are supporting the local economy and you are supporting the local ecology, right? You're supporting the environment, okay? And this is, particularly the case when you are buying from, like local farmers. Okay, when you are, buying from farmers that are, not mass producing, vegetables and fruits, but have, like a smaller plot of land, and they are, farmers that are just doing it out of love and doing it because this is what they've always done, and, doing it because it's good for the world that they live in, right? We need more small farmers. We need more farmers in general, and I think, a lot of times we sort of take farmers for granted and we take food for granted. Like I've tried growing my own food. It's really hard. Like you can't see right now, but like behind my camera setup, I have like a row of herbs that need to go into the ground, and like half of them are dying, because like growing herbs even can be challenging, so by buying local, by eating seasonal foods, you are helping to support a local farmer and helping that farmer stay in a business, helping them keep their land, helping them keep tending to the land. Now, this is not always the case, but a lot of, local small farmers, they take much better care of the land than like the big agricultural, farms that, do one crop at a time. A lot of smaller farmers, they do multiple crops, right? They're not just growing corn. They're not just growing blueberries. They're not just, growing, potatoes. They're not just growing one thing or the other. They're growing many things, right? Which is also really, really good for the ecology of the environment. When you only grow one crop at a time, it can be really, really bad for the soil. It can be really bad for the environment. So it's super important to support farmers that are growing more than one thing, right? That are, doing more for the soil than just like the one thing, because it's just better, right? But also it's keeping that, it's keeping the money in your community, right? Like it's keeping that money supporting your community, and it's keeping that money supporting somebody within your community. And I also think that's a really big deal, so number 3 has a lot to do with your community, right? Supporting your local economy and supporting the local ecology by making sure that, what you're getting. I mean, these farmers too, like, they're growing different things different times of year a lot of the time. If you've ever been to a farmer's market, the same farmers will come back and, over the summer they might have peaches, but in the fall they have, peppers, and they have other things, like they have squash and they have apples, so just again, you keep in mind, like a lot of those, the big agricultural giants, they do one thing, which is really, really hard on the soil. But when you are, constantly rotating crops, and when you are constantly growing different plants, it's a lot better for the environment, it's a lot better for the soil, and ultimately it's a lot better for you as the consumer of these things. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4 is that I really think that, what eating seasonally and locally does is it actually encourages you to try different things, to go out a little bit on a food adventure in some ways. It's like eating things that you might not have looked at initially. It's trying foods that might be a little bit outside of your comfort zone, or trying things that might be really unfamiliar, testing things out. It's also, like, for me, it kind of makes me look forward to specific seasons. that'll be number 5. We'll say that's number 5. We'll say 4 and 5 are different, right? So, it's making me look forward. Like, I look forward to strawberry season. I look forward to blueberry season. I look forward to when peaches come into season because I won't buy them in January. I just won't. They don't taste as good. Why bother? I look forward to when, like squash comes back into season. I get excited about that because I'm like, ooh, what can I make with butternut squash? Like, I'm not going to make it when it's not in season. I'm not going to make it like in April because it's not growing. I can't get it locally. So my body starts to crave the things that are growing at different times of year, and that's kind of exciting, and it's a bummer when the season's over, but, then I'm ready for what's happening in the next season, and I get to start with something else. So number 4 and number 5 are a little bit about adventuring a little bit with food, but also getting excited about what's going to come on your plate because it's different every season, okay? The last one that I want to mention is that when you buy local foods, when you buy seasonal foods, they come straight from the ground, right? Especially if you're going to a farmer's market, if you're going to a farmer's market, usually the farmer, they picked it that day or the day before. It's really, really fresh, all right? That means that there's no chance there's wax on the apple. That means that there's a lot less likelihood that, there are, random things put into the foods to preserve it so that it looks nicer. You're not getting weird preservatives coating your food that eventually go into your digestive system. I just want to eat the food. I don't want to eat wax with my apple. I don't want to eat wax with my green beans. Just want to eat the food, right? So, knowing that your food is seasonal and local, you also know that it doesn't have any weird coatings on it. I think that's a plus. Okay, so those are my biggest pros. Okay, those are my biggest pros for seasonal and local eating. So cons. All right. Cons. I'm going to give you the cons. So number 1, and this has always been the hardest thing for me, is that often my eyes are bigger than my stomach. And my eyes are bigger than, realistically what I can eat in a week. And so the problem becomes I tend to get a little bit more than I actually need. Now, there's a way to combat that. You can preserve foods. You can learn how to do that. It's taken me a really long time to do that. Initially, I was throwing away a lot of things that I wasn't eating, but there are ways that you can preserve foods. You can, if you get too many peaches, turn it into jam or freeze them, right? If you get, too many blueberries, you can do the same thing. If you get too many peppers, if you're not eating your peppers, great, freeze them, save them for chilies, save them for soups, save them for all kinds of things, right? But the tendency is, it's you see all this beautiful food and you're like, whoa, I want all of it, and so you get way more than, you actually can eat. And that can be a problem not only for your your refrigerator, but also in terms of wastefulness and also in terms of your budget, right? It's easier, I think, sometimes to spend more money because, you're just getting so much. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that winter can be hard. Okay, winter can be hard because winter is hard. No, but I mean seriously, if you don't live in a warm climate where things can be grown really easily year-round, you're kind of stuck with foods that might not be super appealing to you during the winter. You might get stuck with a lot of turnips, and which I do not like. I've tried. If somebody watching this video has a really good recipe for turnips that you want to send to me and see if you can convert me to loving turnips, by all means try. But you get a lot of turnips, you get a lot of potatoes, you get, a lot of squash, and you might get tired of it, right? There aren't really any fruits that grow in most places during the winter. So you might really be missing some of those things that, you are really accustomed to eating that you really like, and that can be really hard. And that sort of goes into number 3, which is that it's hard for kids. So number 2 and number 3 is that it's hard. And I say that it's hard for kids because, kids are picky. They're just picky. They like certain foods, like most of us do. But as adults, we can sort of acclimate and, like come up with good reasons why, we're choosing this lifestyle, but kids don't really get that choice because they can't buy their own food. They're at our mercy in a lot of ways. And so, like a seasonal diet can be really hard for them because they're sort of like, well, I don't want to eat apples right now, or I want something, I want strawberries. Like one of the conversations I have with my daughter all the time is, she'll say, can I have strawberries? And I'm like, well, strawberries aren't in season, baby. And she's like, why? Like she's all upset because strawberries aren't in season. And I totally get it. I love strawberries too. But it's a really hard thing for kids. And so, this is where I sort of say, like, a lot of times I will bend my own seasonal rules for my kids so that they have things to eat, even if it means, that it's just food for them. Like I might buy apples out of season because sometimes it's the only fruit that they will eat reliably. So we do the best that we can, but, sometimes you have to bend those rules a little bit for your picky kids or your picky partner or for yourself because, that's just sometimes how it is. So number 2 and number 3, it can be hard. Winter can be really hard. And feeding kids on a seasonal diet can be tricky. Okay. So number 4. Number 4 is that you might live in a food desert. What does that mean? You might live in a food desert, meaning like there aren't a lot of local farms, depending on where you are. And you might not be somebody who can grow food, and so you might be really limited in terms of what you can eat, and that can make seasonal eating very difficult. A food desert is relative, so sometimes you might live in a place where, there's a really good farmer's market over the summer. Like you can get good food from like the end of May until the beginning of October, and then it's done. And that's, it's like, that's only a few months out of the year. What do you do from October, the end of October through the beginning of May? So that can be really tricky. And for that, I usually say, well, you just do the best you can. So it might just be that during the months where you do have access to seasonal food and you do have the ability to support local farmers and you do have the ability to eat more seasonally, that's what you do. And when you don't, you do the best that you can and you try to, like what I try to do is in those seasons, I try to stick with the foods that I would be able to get if they were able to be grown. So I still don't usually buy tomatoes in January. Like I just don't. Don't eat a lot of tomatoes in January. Unless I'm going to can them. Like it's just not a thing that I'm going to do because of that, right? So, it's just something to think about. It's like you do the best that you can. But if you live in a food desert, it can be really hard. Okay, so number 2, 3, and 4 is that sometimes seasonal eating can be really hard, depending on the time of year, depending on, whether or not you're a parent, or you're super picky or have dietary restrictions, or whether or not you live in a food desert. 2, 3, and 4, it can be really hard. Number 5, and this is my last one. Number 5, you're just not used to it. Just not used to it. It's just unfamiliar, like you're used to eating foods whenever you want them. You're used to being able to get apples all year round, right? You're used to buying strawberries all year round. You're used to having access to whatever foods you want whenever you want them. That is an incredible luxury that's actually really new. This is something that's like really like basically just within the last like 50-ish years. Like based on modern technology and, convenience and all kinds of other things like, global food supply. So, it's a massive luxury to be able to have bananas, for example. That doesn't make you a bad person for eating bananas. Like, I eat bananas. Right? I eat things that are not always available to me where I live. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. So I'm just going to say that right now. But I try to eat things that are a little bit more in accordance with the season or things that I can find more readily in the grocery store during different seasons, as best I can, because I don't live in a place where it's always easy to get fresh food all the time. And in the past couple of years, I've moved around a lot and, I've experienced like, oh, well, I can find these foods really easily, but I can't get these at all. So it can be really tricky. So, just keep in mind, like, if you're not used to something, it takes a little time and it takes a little bit of adjusting. So cut yourself a little slack. You know, if you are struggling to eat seasonally, keep it simple. You know, like number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, it's hard. And it's hard mostly because it's unfamiliar. You know, so keep it easy for yourself. You know, go visit a farmer's market and don't buy anything. Just walk around and see what's there. If you want to buy something, like keep it small, like something that you know that you would have like bought in the grocery store. You know, something that, you know, is sort of a treat, you know, like that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to get fresh. You know, that's really the way to approach the challenge of seasonal eating, is you're not like going whole hog all at once. It's more just saying, let me start with a few things. Just a few things and see how it goes. Because I really believe the benefits outweigh the challenges. I really believe that, you know, eating seasonally has not only really contributed to my health, but also, you know, it's made me so much more conscious of where my food comes from, and it's made me so much more appreciative of the food that I can get. You know, there are foods that I haven't had very much of in the past couple of years because I just can't get them as easily. You know, I just can't because of where I live. You know, so it makes me deeply appreciative of the food that I can get in a way that, you know, sometimes going to the grocery store doesn't, because I can get anything there. So those are my pros and cons of seasonal eating. I hope that it's given you a little bit of a foundation of why seasonal eating, you know, can be something that is worthwhile to add to your life. Some of the challenges for sure, but also some of the amazing benefits to eating a little bit more seasonally, eating a little bit more locally, and just being a lot more aware of where your food comes from in general. I'd love to hear what you think of this video and, you know, your thoughts on seasonal eating. You can leave a comment in the comments below and let me know if this resonates with you or if this is something you want to try. Let me know if you are experiencing challenges and you want support, because I am here to help you. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, for listening, for hearing what I have to say, and for joining the conversation about having greater health and wellness at your fingertips. So, as always, I look forward to chatting with you again soon. Until then, bye.